Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
I'm Alison, I'm an alcoholic. Well, I never thought I would see the day that I'd be standing up here doing a 10-year share. I just never crossed my mind. I used to, when I first came in, I used to see people, I said, what are the microphones for? Oh, they're being recorded, they're 10 years sober. And no way, no way I'd ever get there. The first three speakers, they talked about gratitude, and I am so grateful, to be here today. Actually doing this, it's not, my natural state is not standing up here speaking to a crowd of people. My natural state is sitting on my own, drinking to blackout. That is my normal state. But, through having come to Alcoholics Anonymous for the last 10 years and being willing to be, sponsored, working through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, staying sober is not an issue. I find it easy to stay sober these days. Alcohol is not an issue for me anymore. I've found a way to live sober. I'm comfortable being sober. I can live life normally, like normal people do, and that's all I ever wanted. I was brought up like Dino said, in a loving family. There was no reason for me to be an alcoholic, but I do believe that I was born with the disease of alcoholism. As a young child, I was restless, irritable, and discontent. From a very early age, nothing was ever good for me. I was very selfish. I would lie, and I was very discontent. I just nothing was ever good enough for me, and I always wanted what everybody else had. And now, when I went to school, obviously I tried to fit in. I tried to fit in with the other children, and I would act the fool. I always put on this act that everything was fine, and a bit of a class clown and all that sort of thing. And it was just to cover up the way I felt inside, because inside I was just uncomfortable. I was self-centered. I was worried about what people thought of me, and it just made life difficult. That was school, basically. That's how I got through school. I actually picked up my first alcoholic drink when I was about 12. My youngest daughter's just turned 13, and I was thinking, at 13, I was going into pubs. I was drinking Pernod lemonade when I was her age, and I just cringe when I think of it. I drank to blackout. As soon as I started drinking. One or two drinks wasn't on the horizon for me, and I knew before I even started drinking that I would love it. I saw the effect it had on other people, and I just knew that's what I needed, to make my life okay, and it worked. It worked brilliantly. It stopped that feeling of self-centeredness. It made me able to talk to people, to feel like I fitted in. But, like I say, I could never control it. Once I started drinking, I did not know when I was going to stop. And I would, from early on, in my drinking career, I did things that I was ashamed of, things that I wouldn't do if I was sober. And I would cringe when I woke up if I remembered them. If not, somebody would probably tell me about them, and I'd cringe even more then. But I used to laugh it off at that stage, and I always thought that I decided whether I would drink or not. But anyway, like I say, I drank because I couldn't do life. I couldn't take any responsibility, and life was miserable. Life was boring, so I drank. And I drank alcoholically from the word go. I very rapidly started getting very depressed, suicide attempts, antidepressants, that sort of thing. I worked, I started work, I held down a job, and I didn't drink every day. But when I drank to oblivion. I always looked for that speedy oblivion, and I drank as fast as I could to reach it once I'd started. And I think it was like John said, enough was when I passed out. That was enough for me, Or I reached that point where I knew that I was going to pass out. If I was out, I'd go home. I wouldn't tell anybody I was going. I just went home. So yeah, that was my drinking really. We all know how to drink, and I got to about the age of 25, and I was aware at that time that perhaps my drinking wasn't very normal, and that I did seem to do more stupid things than everybody else, and I always drank more than everybody else, and got in more trouble. But even then, I still thought that I was making the choice whether to drink or not. And I had my first child when I was 25, and I thought, right, this is going to sort me out, because I think I might be on the way to having a drink problem. So I thought that would sort me out, but it didn't. It just changed where I drank. It changed from going out to pubs and clubs to drinking at home, feeling sorry for myself because I couldn't go out. And then I got married. I thought that would sort me out. Had another child. And my life was just a series of dramas, misery for everybody around me, and it was just horror. There were good times. I'm sure there were good times, but I think the bad times outweighed the good times, and it was a miserable existence. And I mean, it got to the stage. I mean, I drank alcoholically for 30 years, give or take a few months. And I mean, my brother came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't think he was an alcoholic. I thought I probably had a problem with alcohol, but I didn't think he did. I just thought he was miserable. He's just always been miserable, and that was just the way he was. He never fitted in with anybody, he always got pissed off with people and stormed out at Christmas and all that sort of thing. And, I thought he was just a miserable old git. But he came in here and he stopped being quite such a miserable git, and I thought, wow, that it's obviously doing something for him. But I thought, I didn't think it was for me. But, it planted the seed. He didn't shove it down my neck. He couldn't. He had to take a step back and watch me, hoping that one day I would, be ready. And I went to the doctors about 6 weeks before I came into AA, and I was actually honest with the doctor about how much I was drinking, and he referred me to the Harbour Centre, and they refused me, said it wasn't bad enough. So. That was I had to go home and get pissed then. So obviously wasn't an alcoholic, so the Harbour Centre didn't want me. So I went home and got paralytic again. But yeah, but by that time, I think probably the last, between 5 and 10 years of my drinking, I wasn't going out, I was drinking in isolation, and I was really, really miserable. Suicidal. There was, I couldn't see any point in life, and I think the only reason that I didn't, seriously, try and take my life was because of the children. I felt so guilty. But they couldn't stop. That could not stop me drinking. I need to say that. Having children, changing who I was with, where I was, my job, nothing would stop me drinking. Much as I hoped it would, it couldn't. I may be able to stop for a couple of days, but as soon as I started getting over the physical, symptoms of a spree, that thought would always come into my head. This time it will be different. This time I'll be able to drink normally, and I never could. So anyway, So I've digressed again. I'll do that. Chris gave me the telephone number for Gail, and he said, look, this is the name of a lady in the group. And I said, well, surely you don't want me to come to the same group that you're in. I thought he'd be embarrassed. of me coming in. He said, no, that's fine. So anyway, that number sat on the side for about 3 weeks. And, on the 31st of May, 2006, it wasn't a day any different from any other day. I got up, started drinking quite early, and finished the first bottle of wine. At lunchtime, I was just about to start the second one, and the feeling just came to me that something inside me just died, collapsed, whatever you want to call it, and I just knew at that point that I could not go on any longer, either with or without alcohol. I had two options at that time. I could either kill myself, or I could come to AA, because the option to carry on drinking and still feeling the way I was feeling wasn't there, because the alcohol wasn't working anymore, and I was so desperately unhappy. So I picked up the phone and phoned Gail, and she started telling me a bit about her drinking, about how she felt. I didn't know what to say to her, but she knew what to say to me. She told me about how she drank, about how she felt, how she couldn't control her drinking, how desperately unhappy she was, how she tried different things to change the way she felt, and the reason she drank to change the way she felt. And for the first time in my life, I actually identified with somebody. I'd always thought that I was the only person that ever felt like that, and to actually speak to somebody who obviously felt the same way as I did and drank the same way and didn't feel that way anymore was just a revelation to me. I just could not believe it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel completely alone. Anyway, so that was I think it was on a Tuesday, and we met up on the Thursday for a coffee, and she brought me to a Friday meeting here. And I walked through those doors, and I didn't have any idea what to expect. But I saw, a room full of people that seemed to have it sorted out. They seemed to know what was what. They were talking to each other. They were laughing, and they obviously felt comfortable. And I felt so uncomfortable at that time. I just could not imagine having a conversation with more than one person. The thought of that was horrendous, So I was just told to sit down and listen to the shares and listen to the similarities, not the differences, because, I didn't go to treatment. I never got arrested. I didn't have my children taken away from me. But that was irrelevant. That was completely irrelevant. I identified with the way people felt and the reasons they drank, and their inability to not pick up the first drink that would get them drunk. And those were the things I identified with. And, these people, they told me quite in no uncertain terms that I didn't have to feel like that anymore. I didn't have to feel like the future was a black hole, and that there was no future for me in this world. I never had to feel that as bad as I felt that night again. And all I needed to do was to get myself a sponsor, which is somebody that's already worked through the 12 steps, had a spiritual awakening or a change of thought and attitude, and whose recovery I admired and I wanted. And, at that time, I just wanted what you people had, and I would have done anything. I would have done absolutely anything. So I asked Gail if she would sponsor me, temporary sponsor, and she gave me some simple suggestions to do. She asked me if I was prepared to go to any lengths for victory over alcohol, and yes, I hadn't got a clue what I was saying, But yeah, I was prepared to do anything because I felt so bad, I could not have felt worse at that time. So she gave me the simple suggestions to do. She said, get yourself a big book, Basic Text of Alcoholics Anonymous, Just for Today card. And she sent me home with some telephone numbers, the other girls in the group. And I was told to go home and get down on my knees and thank a higher power or something, just thank something that some power greater than myself, that I'd been sober that day. I could do that. She said, read a passage from the big book. I could do that. Just the doctor's opinion to start with and just keep reading that. Then she said, and write down some things that you're grateful for. Now that was a bit tricky because, my drinking was mostly based on self-pity and, God, I didn't have anything to be grateful for. Life had dealt me a pretty rotten hand, the fact that I had healthy children and a roof over my head and, all these things. I hadn't lost my friends, my family. I had a load to be grateful for and I just didn't realise it. But I did it. I just did it, and I got up the next morning and I got on my knees and I asked a higher power for a sober day. I didn't have any conception of what a higher power was. I was just told that I needed to put in the actions, and that was all I needed to do, and believe that they would work. And I was just willing to do it, I was willing to do anything, like I said. Anyway, so got down on my knees, prayed for a sober day, read some more of the big book, read my Just for Today card, and I had to phone up a couple of other girls that were in the group and phone my sponsor every day, and just to let her know how I was, what I was doing, she could tell, within a few days that I was doing the suggestions, because I started brightening up, literally within a few days of doing those simple suggestions, that obsession to drink, to change the way I felt, had pretty much gone. The suggestions that I was doing were changing the way I felt sufficiently that I wasn't thinking about alcohol. I didn't need it. And I started that knot of fear that I used to wake up with in the mornings, every morning, until I had a drink, went. I was told to get at that time I was very, very lucky because this group had 4 meetings, so I was going to 4 meetings a week and hearing the same message, from all 4 meetings. It was amazing. All the girls were getting together. We were having pizza and film nights and meeting up for coffee, and I just threw myself in. I was so fortunate that I was able, I was in a position to do that, and I had the willingness to put this first. Because I was told that I needed to put this first above everything else, and the quality of my recovery would be based on that. So, and I wanted what the winners in this group had. I wanted to be the best sponsee, and I wanted to be a good example for any other newcomers coming in. Because I was told within a week or two of coming in and starting doing the suggestions, I had something to share for a newcomer. I could speak to a newcomer and say, look, you could come in, you don't have to feel like this anymore. Just start doing, get yourself a sponsor, do these suggestions, and you can start feeling better straight away. Like I say, my sponsor could see that I was, throwing myself into this. I was doing service, I was sweeping up, getting to my meetings early, and I was loving it. I was absolutely loving it. And people outside the meetings, they noticed a change in me. My family noticed a change very quickly, and she saw that. Like I say, she saw I meant business, and she said, "Right, you've obviously got." I proved that I had step 1, that I was powerless over alcohol, that my life had become unmanageable. Because I had the willingness to do this stuff, I proved that. And I was ready to believe that a power greater than myself could take away, the defects of character. So, we went out to Buckfast Abbey. I got down on my knees and did the step 3 prayer with my sponsor. And, it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And just to be able to turn my life and my will over to a higher power, any old higher power that, you fancy is fine. It was just such a relief. I say that step 3 prayer every morning and every evening, and I have done every day, every morning and every evening since that day. And because I have to remind myself that I have turned my life and my will over to my higher power, and through remembering that, I can accept, accept anything that comes along. I mean, over the last 10 years, I've had trials and low spots, as we call them. Everything hasn't been brilliant all the time, but I know that I can deal with anything, if I put this program first, absolutely anything. And if anybody comes in and thinks, they need to deal with something else before getting sober, that's rubbish. This will resolve everything. This will resolve any problems. But anyway, yes. So I did my step 3, and that was brilliant. And then I had to do my step 4, which wasn't so brilliant. But I was told to just get on with it. I think I was given a 3-week period to do it in, and I just had to write down all my resentments, all my fears, all my sexual conduct for as far back that I could remember, and who I had the resentment towards, what the resentment was, and I then became familiar with my defects of character, which I didn't think I had. But it became all too apparent that I had some defects of character that were sort of simmering below the surface, that were causing me to not feel very comfortable, let's put it that way. Like I say, I was ruled by self-pity, self-centeredness, selfishness. It was all about me. Everything was all about me. And my best thinking, my self-will, whatever you want to call it, got me here. So I wrote all that down, and I shared it with my sponsor. I heard in the meetings, if I was fearless and thorough with that part of the steps, then the chances are that I would have a good chance of staying sober. I did not want to drink. I did not want to go back to how I felt before I came in here. So I was fearless and thorough, and I wrote everything down, and I shared it with my sponsor, and that was basically it. She said, "Well, you're just an average alcoholic," because she shared some of the things that she'd done. I think they're probably worse than mine, but that's Gail for you. But it was just such a relief to get rid of all that stuff. I didn't have to feel guilty. I could get rid of the guilt and the remorse, and I could recognise my part in all the things that I'd done wrong. The 6 and 7, I was ready to have my defects of character removed from me. So we said the step 7 prayer. Another one that I say, I haven't finished yet. So I prayed for my defects of character to be removed, and again, every morning and every night since that day, I've prayed for the same thing, because I've still got those defects of character, and they can creep up on me and cause me problems if I'm not, on top of them, if I'm not aware of them. We've got step 10s. I made amends to the people that I'd hurt in my step 9, and in step 10, I can deal with resentments as they come along. I don't need to suffer. Any suffering that I do need these days is of my own making. I don't have to suffer anymore. Misery is definitely optional. I don't need to wallow in self-pity, because that gets me absolutely nowhere. I've discovered that. And I've got to put this first. I can't get complacent. I cannot afford to get complacent about this stuff. 10 years sober is nothing. I'm hopefully got a lot of years in front of me that I'm going to be on this planet, and I want to stay sober, and I want my life to get better, because I'm assured it will, if I put this first, and keep the principles of AA in my life. stay sponsorable. I've got to stay honest, humble, keep the humility I had when I came in. Then I know that the best years of my existence lie ahead. And, if there's anybody new or struggling, just go for it. If I can stay sober for 10 years and love every minute of it, then, there's hope for everybody. This is guaranteed if you throw yourself into it. Get yourself a sponsor, copy that big book, and just be willing to do the principles of AA, the actions. Put in the actions and you'll be fine. And thanks again.
I'm David, I'm an alcoholic. It's really, really good to be at my home group tonight, and welcome to any newcomers or people that are coming back. 3 great shares. My experience is that I was 20 years sober a couple of weeks ago, and I've never had it so good. Life is amazing. Do you know what I mean? That's what's on offer here. I didn't set out to be an alcoholic when I was younger. When I went to the careers office, I didn't say I want to be an alcoholic. Do you know what I mean? That seems to have good career, prospects. You know what I mean? But from an early age, I was interested in alcohol. You know what I mean? I come from an Irish background, and I did used to like a drink. Do you know what I mean? My family. It seemed like they used to come home on a Saturday night, bring a couple of crates of beer back, a bottle of Coke and some crisps for us lot. That's the kids. And I remember my mum and my dad and the friends used to put the music on, and they used to, they used to drink, and obviously they seemed to be more happier. Do you know what I mean? And I remember just having this sort of fascination of this stuff from an early age. You know what I mean? And me and my cousin, one time we had these bottles of beer, and we didn't have a bottle opener. I was trying to open them, she was trying to bite them. Eventually we just smashed it against the wall, and I tasted the stuff, and I thought, that is so nasty. How the hell did how did I even drink that stuff? Do you know what I mean? It's awful. It tastes like poison. But that sort of obsession with, I remember I used to go to the pub. I'm not that big now, but there used to be curtains. I used to look over. I used to see them all, people in the pub, and I always wanted to be, doing that sort of stuff. And I grew up. I had a good upbringing. I mean, I went to a good Catholic school. Tried to do the right things. You know what I mean? I used to try and practice that, that sort of religion, which is a good religion. But part of me wanted to misbehave. Do you know what I mean? I was always thinking to myself, I don't like being good. Do you know what I mean? So when the teacher went out of the classroom, I used to be rifling through her handbag, trying to nick her money. Do you know what I mean? And this is from about the age of 9 or 10. And I weren't the worst kid in the world, but for some reason I wanted to do the wrong things. You know what I mean? And if my family, if I got caught doing that, my mum and dad would absolutely be devastated. Do you know what I mean? But for some reason, it didn't actually stop me. Do you know what I mean? And I'd go across the road after school, not every day, but I would, when the guy was looking the other way, I'd nick some fags, nick some crisps, and and then I'd go back to confession and try and just lie about what happened. Do you know what I mean? And so I was never really completely right even before I started drinking, but. For me, I sort of... Drinking, for me, seemed to ease that discomfort, do you know what I mean? Because even though I was feeling all that sort of stuff, I was so sort of... I worried from an early age what people thought about me, do you know what I mean? I was self-conscious, you know what I mean? I had, goofy teeth. I used to wear a brace. My nose used to run constantly, do you know what I mean? And, when people took the mickey out of me, I took it really personally, do you know what I mean? And it was like, I took that all in, do you know what I mean? And so I was kind of concerned about how people thought about me, but I kind of created this life for myself. I became, my mates were into fashion. I ended up buying nice clothes. Well, my mum bought nice clothes for me. And I started changing my sort of image. And then through that, I started going to parties at school. And I remember just from an early age, we used to go to these pubs, and they'd never let me in there because I was too small, so we used to have all these dodgy IDs, you know what I mean, that we got from places. My friends got them, and I remember having this one when I was 20. He said I was 21, And I remember memorising this birth certificate, my name and what my date of birth was, all the way to this pub, thinking that I was going to get in, because all my mates seemed to be taller and have beards. And they're only about 13, 14. And I remember getting into this pub and not being able to... And the guy said, "You're having a laugh," and just took the birth certificate off me. And I had to wait outside while, again, they were drinking. But, they're laughable consequences. But, I got to a point in, through that sort of life of drinking and running on self-will, I never kind of grew up. I used to take rejection quite badly. If I was with a girl and it all went wrong, which it always did, I'd be, devastated, do you know what I mean, and in tears. And never being able to get over my emotions. My emotions seem to always rule me. And my mum would say, "Get over it, there's loads more fish in the sea." And, but I never got over it. I'll just carry on drinking. And eventually I got to a point where my life just completely went downhill. Alcohol stopped working. It says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous there was always one more attempt and one more failure. And, I was suffering from paranoia, anxiety. The alcohol stopped working. And it just seems everywhere I seem to look, there seem to be problems, you know what I mean? And, I wish for the end. It talks about knowing loneliness that few do. Do you know what I mean? I just felt that deep loneliness where I didn't want to be that person no more. Do you know what I mean? And it's, I became a defeated alcoholic, even though I didn't know it at that time. Something broke inside me. And, I started seeking help. And, what happened to me was that I tried a few treatment centres. Didn't really, kind of heard of AA. AA turned up at my house once for my old man. My mum called them, and it was two guys in suits. I thought they were CID, so I ran out. They looked so smart, do you know what I mean? And my mum said, "You better make yourself look scarce," so I done a runner. So I did, do you know what I mean? And that's the only time I kind of met people from AA. They looked quite like the police, to be honest to me. So, and then I ended up going through a couple of treatment centres, and, treatment didn't work for me. The reason why, they were good people, and they tried to help me, but I'm an alcoholic. I suffer from, I've got a spiritual illness, do you know what I mean? I've got this disease, this, like Steve talked about, this obsession of the mind, this physical allergy from alcohol, where I can swear it off, do you know what I mean? I can hide away from it, but I have this strange irrational thinking around it, where I just... For some reason, I fancy a drink, a good idea comes into my head. And then once I start drinking, I can't stop. Do you know what I mean? And when I was in treatment, all I was doing was talking about my emotions, do you know what I mean, and my issues that I thought I had. And I thought the more honest I get, the better I will feel. But I actually felt worse. Do you know what I mean? It's only through that treatment that really they sent me to Alcoholics Anonymous, is go to AA. And eventually I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what I mean, as part of that suggestion. And then I remember coming to meetings, around in Plymouth, because obviously that's where I moved down to. And I had a sponsor at the time, but it says we can't transmit something we haven't got. Do you know what I mean? You need a sponsor that's worked the 12 steps. You need someone that's worked this program, that's got in their life. Do you know what I mean? It's had a spiritual awakening that can pass it on to you. Do you know what I mean? You can't transmit something you haven't got. And so the guy that was trying to sponsor me really didn't have the program. It was a watered-down version of it. And eventually I heard Wayne, my sponsor, sharing it was on a Friday night meeting. It's a Monday meeting, a meeting that used to go to the Joys of Recovery. And I heard a lot of bad press about Wayne, but I heard him sharing, and I just thought, this can't be the same guy people have been talking about, do you know what I mean? And, he had something about him, he had a sparkle in his eyes, do you know what I mean? He had a purpose about him. And I remember saying, come along to my meeting, and I remember coming along to the meeting, it was up on the Hoe. It's probably this time of year, do you know what I mean? I shared, to be honest, when I was 2 years sober, at the Roads Recovery, and Ali was the secretary at the time, and John was there, Wayne was there, Alexis was there, and a few other guys as well. And I remember going to that meeting. It was freezing in there, but there was something about that meeting. There was a spirit in that meeting. There's people that normally wouldn't mix together. Do you know what I mean? That's what you find in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's people from all walks of different lives. Do you know what I mean? But we have this common purpose. You know what I mean? We have this solution that we absolutely all agree on. And that's what I heard that night, that unity in that room of sharing about the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I mean? The undiluted message of the 12 steps. That if you work the steps with a sponsor, soon as possible, you will get what's on offer, which is an amazing life. Do you know what I mean? A life of freedom, a life that gets better as time passes. And, all these promises were shared every week to me. Do you know what I mean? And I remember just looking at them thinking, I've got nothing else going on. I want this program more than anything else. Do you know what I mean? I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. My life was boring. Do you know what I mean? I had nothing going on. It was just tedious. Do you know what I mean? And these guys were offering me a solution better than I've ever been offered before. No doctor could offer me that. No counsellor. Nothing else in that world could offer me what they were offering me. And it was, it was a great life. And I could see it in them. Do you know what I mean? They were saying it week in, week out. And they said, you didn't have to wait around. There's no waiting list here tonight. You can be seen straight away. You don't have to make an appointment. You can get sponsored tonight and start getting on with the work. And I was told that. Do you know what I mean? And, I'm not a complete mug. Do you know what I mean? And I saw something on with these guys that they were saying. It's strange because I identified more with Wayne and John and Alexis than any other meeting, funny enough. I identified with their thinking, do you know what I mean, how they reacted to things. It wasn't so much the drinking. Drinking is just a symptom of the problem. Do you know what I mean? It's about how we think. It's about alcoholism, do you know what I mean? And not only that, how they live in their lives today, the solution. And, they told me to buy a copy of the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what I mean? I started reading that book. It was the most boringest book I've ever read. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't understand any of it, do you know what I mean? But I was told to read it. I was told to say a simple prayer. I was told to call my sponsor every day. I used to just live around the corner. I used to walk to the phone box, put the money, try and phone my sponsor. He was engaged, and then I phoned back again. And then, he said that, it's time to go through the work. And I remember going round to his house. And me and Andy Redjacket was kind of going through the steps because I used to see him coming back. And probably we were doing the steps at the same time. So, but he got here before me. But by a few weeks. But I remember going around doing this step 3, and I remember thinking, I'm going to give this a go. I really are going to give this a go. Do you know what I mean? Because I want what's on offer. I want to be a better person. I want a better way of life. Do you know what I mean? I'm in my early 20s. I've lived that hellish well of life, like everyone knows. You know what I mean? Everyone knows how it feels to be an alcoholic out there living that life. Well, it ain't even living; it's existing. It's dying, basically. And to come in here and then be offered a solution, and for the first time in your life have a bit of hope in your life. And I remember going around doing that step 3, and then just after that thinking to myself, I'm going to give this a go, and then I went through the rest of the steps. And I remember doing my step 4 and 5, and it talks about up there, misery is optional, you know what I mean? And, once I'd done that step 4 and 5, I couldn't always stop the resentments coming in, but I could do something with them. Do you know what I mean? Because I lived my life before, it was everyone else's fault. Do you know what I mean? It was the place I grew up in. It was my parents. I should have had the parents down the road who were drug dealers. Do you know what I mean? Because they seemed more cooler. Do you know what I mean? They let the kids up all night and they let them smoke weed. Do you know what I mean? Why I should have had them. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't realise at the time that my parents were doing the loving thing around me all the time by keeping me in. Do you know what I mean? Or trying to do the right thing. I'm a parent today. I know. I can understand that today. Do you know what I mean? But I just remember doing that step 4 and 5, and sharing the stuff with my sponsor that I'd never shared with anyone else. Do you know what I mean? My deepest, darkest secrets, the things that I used to think about myself. Do you know what I mean? More so, it was more stuff that I thought about than the stuff I actually done. Because over the years, my mind got sicker and sicker and sicker. Do you know what I mean? And that's what happened to me. And I remember sharing that stuff, and it just seemed like, it talks about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous again, we might have had certain spiritual beliefs, but we start to have a spiritual experience. And that's the great news. You can change despite yourself. You don't have to think about it. If you do it, you're changed. The result is a spiritual awakening, which is the best deal for people like us. And I remember my sponsor saying to me, we was up on the moors, sharing that step 5. There was cows out there. And I remember saying Alexis and the rest of the guys are out there somewhere, so I was a bit paranoid that they weren't. But, I remember doing that step 5 and coming back and just thinking, I knew then something had changed in me. Do you know what I mean? You know when you've done that step and you've taken it honestly. Do you know what I mean? And you know that knot inside your stomach starts to ease and that you start to see things differently. And that, that's you start to feel that higher power in your life. You know what I mean? And that power great in yourself. And I remember just looking at and thinking, this is good stuff. Do you know what I mean? This is good stuff. This, I've drunk a lot of alcohol and I've taken drugs, but this is becoming the best buzz I've ever had. Do you know what I mean? This is real. This is the real deal. And I remember just, going through the rest of the steps, you know what I mean? And, coming to my meeting like Steve shared about, I remember putting my hand up. I wasn't so excited about sharing like Steve was. I used to want to say what I wanted to say. It all used to come out wrong, but my sponsors used to just keep putting, just keep sharing. Just keep putting the action in. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But you just keep coming along. You keep doing that stuff. Do the opposite of what your mind's telling you. Share for the newcomer. Let them know what's going on. You know what I mean? That your life's changed. Because we can only keep what we have by giving it away. You can't sit in silence. You know what I mean? Tell them what's happened in your life, how it's changed. And that's been my experience. You know what I mean? That's what I started to do. Once I started to talk about it, it seemed like it became even better. Do you know what I mean? And that's been my experience. And I know that's happened for a lot of people. And after that, I just made amends. You know what I mean? And I made amends to my mum and dad, the people that I really treated badly. The people that really stuck by me, the people that really should have thrown me out years ago, but loved me when I didn't love myself. I went back to them people and I sat down with them and I said, "Would you forgive me for my inexcusable behaviour? I'm really, sorry I treated you that way." And they just said, "Carry on doing what you're doing." We always knew that you had a good heart. We knew you were sick. Do you know what I mean? And what a response that was. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I could have said that to someone if someone treated me that badly. You know what I mean? I probably would have said, "See you later." But, that's what parents are there for, do you know what I mean? And I remember just going back and making amends to them and my other family. I had to do some financial amends, you know what I mean? And, just the promises come after step 9, you know what I mean? It's, there's more good stuff, do you know what I mean? It's not just, you do your step 5, there's promises all the way through the steps. And, I started to lose that fear of today. And I remember just knowing that the rest of my life could be so good, you know what I mean? And for me, I've lived 20 wonderful years, you know what I mean? I've lived, a different life, you know what I mean? A life that, it has been amazing, do you know what I mean? It has been absolutely amazing, and anyone can have this, you know what I mean? I was told, Wayne's old sponsor, David B, he used to always say, "Go for gold, go for gold, you can go for gold in Alcoholics Anonymous." And I remember meeting this guy, spending a bit of time with him. He used to come down to Plymouth and amazing guy. He was a gentleman, like Wayne talks about, and he said, "You can go for gold." That guy was always with newcomers, like my sponsor is, and I never forget them words, and that's what I've done. I insist in enjoying life today. Do you know what I mean? It talks about in the Just Today card, I'm happy as I make my mind up to be. We're not a glum lot. Do you know what I mean? Even though we have sometimes difficult times and, things don't always go away, which is life itself, that's part of the deal. Because I used to hide away from life. I used to sit on the sidelines thinking, I ain't going to go and talk to that girl because I'm going to probably get rejected in the end. I ain't going to do this. And I used to think about stuff that, because it's always going to be negative. Do you know what I mean? And Alcoholics Anonymous is showing me courage to grow up and face life, you know what I mean? And do things that are above me. Do you know what I mean? That was never going to happen for me because I was always sitting on the sidelines watching everyone else get on with life, resenting them because I couldn't do it, and I've been able to grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what I mean? And, through working these steps, and practicing these principles, you know what I mean? That's where the good stuff comes again, you know what I mean? Because, I was so unforgiving, do you know what I mean? Forgiveness was not even in my vocabulary, do you know what I mean? I was so cut off emotionally from what was going on. Do you know what I mean? It's like I see alcoholism as a soul sickness. Do you know what I mean? And through the result of working these steps, I've been able to learn to be forgiving. Do you know what I mean? And I remember when I first, a couple of years into Alcoholics Anonymous, all I wanted was a girlfriend. Do you know what I mean? Because most people do. Well, it depends what sex you are, but it's, and I remember just, you've got to be careful what you pray for, do you know what I mean? Because I got one, and which is fine, but then, got married, and that went, it didn't go wrong, because I don't think anyone, I have no regrets today, you know what I mean? Everything that's happened in my recovery has happened for a reason. I don't see things as regrets. I just see that as another chapter in my life, do you know what I mean? And, as a result of that, my life completely changed again. I remember being 8 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, being in my home group. I had this emotional things going on, and I remember I stopped communicating with my sponsor, and I remember leaving this group for 2 days, you know what I mean? Which ain't a long time, but, I couldn't even leave this meeting if I wanted to, do you know what I mean? Because when I was out there hiding in my flat, when people were calling me, and I remember going to my sponsor's house and talking to him, he said, just communicate with me, you don't have to be perfect. Who told you have to be perfect? Where'd you get that stuff from? But I'd built this stuff up in my own mind that I had to be a certain way. Because I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't mean I'm not going to have times where things are going to hurt, things are going to go wrong. Do you know what I mean? And that's something I built up in my own sort of mind. And people leave the meeting sometimes because they think they have to be a certain way. And that taught me a lesson. Do you know what I mean? And I changed again. I got closer to my higher power. I came back to this group only after a couple of days. But I realised that, that had another shift in me. And I overcome that problem, do you know what I mean? And I remember just one day thinking about it. I remember waking up one day and thinking, I'm not even actually thinking about it no more. That is amazing. Because all my problems before that, I seemed to drag them around. Do you know what I mean? I was able to deal with it, and my sponsor got me to do 12-step calls, working with other alcoholics, throwing myself completely into this meeting, getting to extra meetings. And eventually I got through that, and I remember just... Even in them times where it felt quite painful, I felt free and happy, which that's the good news, you know what I mean? There were moments where I felt like that, but the other times I felt like I was happy, joyous and free. And my life today is absolutely, absolutely amazing. This Monday gone, my old man died 2 weeks ago. I went back to his funeral on Monday. Me and my brother and my cousins helped to carry the coffin, and I remember just being around my family that day. Even though it was quite a really sad day, I remember the comfort I got from my family and how I was there to be for them, and I remembered all the good things about my old man, because when I was a kid, I used to wish for his death. Do you know what I mean? I hated him. Funny enough, when I come into recovery and started doing the right things and had my own family, I realised how much a good man he was. Do you know what I mean? And how warped my perspective was around him, and how diseased my thinking was. And I realised that he was quite a good man, you know what I mean? And he'd done a lot for a lot of people. Do you know what I mean? He was a man, if someone was on their own, he'd go and visit them in hospital. You know what I mean? He'd do stuff in his local community. But because I was out there getting off my head, drinking and misbehaving, of course we were going to clash. Do you know what I mean? I didn't see that at the time, because I was such a selfish, self-centred person. I couldn't really see past my own nose. Do you know what I mean? That's the way I was. And I know for anyone in this meeting, do you know what I mean, that the best is yet to come if you stick around. It's been the most exciting journey of my life. Do you know what I mean? And I'm living probably living the best days of my life. Do you know what I mean? I'm living in a wicked part of Plymouth. Do you know what I mean? Plympton. So if you come along to that area, make sure you don't misbehave, because Mark will sort you out. he's the mayor of Plympton. But you know what I mean? I'm living in a really lovely part of Plymouth. I'm not saying the rest is rubbish, but I've got a wonderful life today. You know what I mean? I've got 4 wonderful children. I've got a job that I enjoy. Do you know what I mean? That I'm probably the most happiest person in that place, which winds people up. People say that I come to work and I'm already excited about what I'm doing. Some people never even get there, but I'm just, every day I count my blessings. You know what I mean? I say a simple prayer in the morning and I ask God, a loving God that's changed my life. To be sober that day, and to be divorced from self-pity, and trying to help other people. That's where it's at. Anyone can get this. If you're new here tonight, I'm really, really excited for you, because I can see the potential in people. Do you know what I mean? When I see sponsor people, I think you can do so much better for yourself. Do you know what I mean? And that's what my sponsor done to me. He just showed me the way and encouraged me to do the right thing and take responsibility for my life. You know what I mean? Not to be a child no more and grow up. And I love the way I see things today. My whole perspective in life's changed. You know what I mean? I can think things through. I can make decisions. Do you know what I mean? And that's brilliant. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't make any decisions before. I can take my inventory. You know, I can shut my mouth when I need to shut my mouth. You know what I mean? Hopefully, do you know what I mean? Make amends. You know, and I try not live my life with regrets. You know what I mean? Every day I try and see situations and think, probably I shouldn't do that today, or probably I shouldn't say that to my missus. Not perfect. You know what I mean? I said something to her this morning I had to make amends to, but. You know, so, you know, the best years of your life lie ahead, you know. Get yourself a sponsor, go through the steps. You know, don't worry about a higher power, mate. Do you know what I mean? You know, if you're new around, don't, you know, I just done it, you know, I acted like I was powerless. I didn't know what to do. So I got a sponsor and I followed his suggestions, you know what I mean? And whatever he said went, you know what I mean? And I see today, you know, I'm as happy as I make my mind up to be, you know. And it's good to be wrong, you know, because I get to be happy. Do you know what I mean? That's the way I see it, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.